So we're going to talk about the rear axle and the components on the rear axle and how basically the entire rear axle is assembled. So I'm going to go through disassembly and talk about the parts and pieces of the rear axle. So first of all, on the rear end, obviously we have a zinc coated axle here. This is a thick wall axle. Our standard axle is a zinc coated 32-inch 0.190 thick wall axle. 32 inches across, yep. 1.25 inch zinc coated thick wall axle. Now, this axle is sitting in two cassettes. This cassette, the right cassette, and the left cassette. One thing that you can do on these cars and on a lot of modern carts is you can take out the Allen bolts on the top. And just so you know, this is a 1/4 inch Allen wrench here. And there's little washers in these on the bolt in this cassette. You want to make sure you have those washers on there. And so I'm going to pull these out and show you why this is advantageous. So you can see that the cap on the cassette just pops right off of there. The two Allen bolts in my hand just pops off. There's a sleeve, this right here. Okay, this is called the lube ring. This lube ring is on the outside of the bearing itself. You have to have this lube ring on the outside of the bearing to sit in the slot right here in the top of the cassette. So those are necessary if you're ever having to replace these. Make sure that you get new lube rings as well. So I'm going to take off the left side as well. So we'll take off the left one. And it's never a bad idea to put anti-seize on any of these bolts that go in here, just to make sure that you don't have a hard time at some point to get these Allen bolts out of here. It's not a bad idea to put anti-seize on these and any of the bolts that hook the axle components to the actual axle itself. Let's see if I can get this washer out of here without dropping it. There we go. Okay, so now the cap on the cassette comes off just like the other one. We have the lube ring there. And this is what is really beneficial about the modern cassette, is that the modern cassette allows you to take the caps off, which then allows you to pop the entire axle out of the lower portion of the cassette. So you can see the lube rings are still on the bearings themselves, okay? And it makes it really nice and easy. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, you may want to do this so that you could have a backup axle in the trailer. Allows you to easily pop the caps off, pull the axle out if you happen to bend one or damage something, and throw a new axle right in really easy and quick. It's not that hard to do, pretty simple. So let's go ahead and just pop this back in there. We'll set it back in there for now, just so we can look at the rest of this. And we'll start down here on this end, and we'll talk about this right rear hub. So the right rear hub is a double lock rear hub. Has two bolts here in the hub. That's why it's called double lock, pretty simple. You're also gonna notice there's a snap ring in the groove of the axle on the outside of this hub. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen the hub here. Actually, before I loosen it all the way, I want to show you a measurement that's very important on this. And this is our standard setup on both the Stealth and the Wraith, is the distance from the hub to the edge of the bearing. On the right side, the distance that we're going for is 2 7/8 inches. So if you look at this from your vantage point, we're going to be at 2 7/8 inches from here to the edge of the bearing. Okay. On the other side, we'll take a quick peek at that. On this side, if you look there, we're going to be at 2 3/4 inches from the edge of the bearing to the inside of the hub. So the left side 2 3/4, the right side 2 7/8. Now, that's going to give us a track width of just about 23 inches. That's what we're going to want there. The 23 inches is actually going to be measured from the inside of the wheels. So just to state that again, track width is inside of the wheels. The wheels are not on the car, obviously. In this case, the standard setup, which we typically do not change on our car, is 2 7/8 from bearing to hub, 2 3/4 on the other side, on the left side, 2 3/4 from bearing to hub there. That's our standard setup. That's where we want to set these at. Now, if we go back and look right here where I started, the right rear hub, double lock hub, has 2 Allen bolts. We'll loosen those up. Once those are loose, you can notice the hub loosens. Should allow it to slide freely. So it slides on the axle. What we're going to do is we're going to take the snap ring off. Snap ring, pliers. There's the snap ring. That's the snap ring that's on this axle. Goes in the groove on the axle right there. We pull the hub right off of there. So the hub has a slot for the key. The axle will have a key that's custom made for this slot so that it cannot slide, it cannot move in here. So that's pretty simple. You'll notice on the hub itself, not unlike the front hubs, you have the stud that goes through the hub, and we typically use 1/4 inch studs. And then there is the lug that we already have screwed all the way on the stud just for shipping in this manner. And then there's nipples on the ends of the studs that allow easy installation when you're at the track, easy to find it to get the thread started on here. One of the things when you have a new car is you want to, often we will put Loctite on the stud itself so that it stays in the hub. Because sometimes you have to watch that when you put on the lug that it doesn't back the stud out. So that's something you want to watch, is that that when you have a new car that you're not backing the studs out of the hub when you're putting it on for the first time or changing one out. So that's the simplicity of the hub there. So you'll notice on the left side of the car, when you receive your car from us, or if you're just buying parts from us, something to know is that we always pin the left side of our axle. The axle itself has a hole in it. The bearing is threaded and has a threaded hole right here where this bolt is. What we do is line it up and we have a specific bolt for this. We pin the left side right through the bearing, right through that bearing nose, right into the axle itself. Now it's pinned to the axle. We only pin the left side. We do not pin the right side. Now, out here, the left side hub. This is going to be very similar to what we talked about with the right side hub. Sometimes what you'll see people run a single locking hub on the left side. We have went and changed ours to a double locking hub on the left side. The reason we run a double locking hub on the left side is because our car is designed to drive off the left rear. This car drives very hard off the left rear. And without this double locking hub, you will blow hubs right off the left of this car because of how hard it drives. So what we're going to do is go ahead and loosen this up a little bit. Let's take our measurement once again so we can remember where we're at. This is standard setup. We typically do not move our hubs. We have other ways that we prefer to adjust that we think are more advantageous. So let's look at it again. 2 3/4 from bearing to the edge of the hub on the left side. We're at 2 3/4 inches. Okay, 2 3/4 inches. Remember, that's not to the wheel. That's to the hub. 2 3/4 inches. So let's go ahead and go through this again as a refresher of how we did it. Let's pop this hub off here. It's a little tight. Okay. All you have to do is loosen those guys up. Once again, not a bad idea to put anti-seize on those as well. Now, that should slide, get it loose enough. It'll slide right on that axle, slide back and forth right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull the snap ring off again. Remember, you have to have a snap ring on both sides. Oh, got him off. Pull the hub off. We'll notice key stock again, custom made to fit that slot so it can't move back and forth. The hub has a slot in it for that key stock specifically. Only way it came off is I removed the snap ring, so it goes back on the same way. I won't go, the lugs, the nuts, all that, same thing. 1/4 inch lugs, 1/4 inch nuts. Put a little bit of Loctite in here so that those can't back out. You'll save yourself some time. When you go to put this on, make sure you line it up with the key stock. And you may need to take a little rubber mallet and tap it on, but mine goes on pretty easily. And so then what we want to do is let's check our measurement again. We want 2 3/4. Oh, looks like I got lucky because I'm at 2 3/4 right there. See that? 2 3/4 inches right to the edge from bearing to hub. Next thing I would do is go ahead and grab the snap ring that I flung off. I go ahead and put this snap ring, try to do it left-handed, see how that works. Snap ring back on. Sits nicely down in the slot. Take a look at it on all sides, make sure that it's down in the slot the way that it should be. Looks like it's seated well. Then all we would need to do is go back, tighten these guys up really, really well. You don't want those to move on you. I'm only going to snug them down a little bit, but I would probably use the other end of this Allen and really wrench on them pretty good to make sure it's not going to move if I was at the racetrack. So that's the hub, and that is the set screw that goes in the axle.